All right, with digital coloring as part of our spot illustration project, in this demo I'm going to go through the main types of digital coloring, and I'm going to try to use some of these real-world examples as well. So I just drew something quickly, some line work that I could color behind for this spot illustration. And then I pulled up these Wonder Woman examples to show you different types of coloring. But one thing I wanted to show you as well is how you can steal color directly from other Photoshop files. So if I open up this reference image of Wonder Woman as a Photoshop file, and I float it in its own window, kind of drag it out to the side, and space management kind of becomes an issue here. So I often float both of them in their own windows so they can be side by side. You want to be able to see your layers. I don't need my color reference, it's kind of like a palette I'm going to be using, to be too big. But if I want to steal exact colors, I'm going to use the brush tool on my digital coloring project. Remember, I've locked the black line layer on top, I've locked the white paper layer underneath, and so I'm just working on this flat color layer. And I had picked this type of color, this yellow, by clicking on the foreground color bar and using this selector, spectrum here, values here. But what I can do is if I wanted to steal this intense yellow right away, all I do is when I have the brush tool, I just hold down the option button and it turns it into the paint dropper tool, eyedropper tool. And I can just click on that other yellow and pick it exactly. Or if I wanted the blue of her shorts, I could pick that and have that exact color. You can also assign your own colors to a certain palette and put them on swatches here. The top bar will actually have the last several that have been chosen. So there's lots of ways you can find your colors to paint with. But what I want to go through is just the difference between flat color, duotone color, soft edge, hard edge, and full spectrum color. So once you choose a yellow, and I actually like this kind of golden yellow more than that really bright lemon yellow from Wonder Woman. Once you choose it, you simply can paint it in behind your line work. And what I'll often do is trace around the edges like so. It's all going to be one flat color. And then I'll just use the paint bucket and fill in the shapes in between what I started. There's a few other ways you can go about it though. As long as you have a self-contained drawing, this goes back to the earliest drawing programs. So a self-contained shape like the bird's head, what I can do is I can click on the spot illustration line work and I can use the magic wand with contiguous checked. You see, and that will select, even though the layer is locked, we're not altering the layer at all, we're just selecting inside its shape. And then I can move that selection to my flat color layer, and that allows me to paint it in. Completely. So that's handy. And remember, that's on the color layer, not on the black line layer. We're keeping our black line safe. And if I select a different color, like this blue, it becomes very easy to just fill things in fully. Where that's a little bit harder is where the shapes aren't fully contained like the rest of the bird. And if you try to do that, in areas that aren't contained, and then you try to paint it in, you'll see that it bleeds over. So depending on the design, that can be a very useful practice. So what I tend to do is to simply paint by hand my colors. But what I love about digital coloring is after I've painted them, I can always change them very easily. And you don't even need to be too worried about being precise, because we can always clean it up at the end. So when I'm doing these flames, it's okay if I go a little bit outside of the lines. It's very easy to clean it up once you're finished. Now, the reason all digital coloring starts with flat coloring isn't just because it's the simplest type of coloring. It also gives you a firm grasp of your palette, of what kind of colors you want to incorporate. So I'm using a classic primary palette here with blue, yellow, and red. Very comic booky. But it might be a little too over the top. And so what's nice about keeping your colors separate from your line work, like so, is you can always make alterations to your colors in Photoshop very easily too. So we're going to play with that a little bit. All right, so I'm going to fill this in with blue. Another way, of course, that you can fill in areas quickly is using the Lasso Tool. And instead of using the paintbrush to contain your shapes, you can just use the lasso to contain a selection. And you're just trying to get it behind the black lines. And then you can use your paint bucket and fill it in. Now, flat colors will show you some of the weaknesses in your color choices or the challenges of your design. So if I want this bird to be blue, I probably don't want the same blue to be the bottom of the crown. So at this point, because they're still separated, I can just select that blue of the crown and I can pick a different type of blue, or maybe even a purple. Purple's very royal, that could work. And I just paint that in instead. And it all exists behind my black line work. And then the blue of the bird, I'll just paint in loosely with the Lasso Tool here. Now, flat color is when any local color is filled in with one single color by the colorist. So if we look at Wonder Woman, flat color doesn't necessarily mean limited color. It just means that there's one color for each thing. So her skin, no matter where her skin is, it's always one color. Her hair, other than black and white, which aren't colors, is only one color. Her lasso, only one color, and so on. So I could make the bird have a different color body than its head because they are separate elements. So maybe I choose a different blue from this palette. I don't know how different it is, but it's slightly different. And then I might use those same colors by using the Option tool to color in some of these jewels. And then the back of the crown, I might choose a different flat color. It's the inside of the crown, so it's a different object too. So I can do kind of a muddier yellow color, more of an ochre. And I might decide, oh, I need that in here too, because that's the back side, the inside of the gold. Before you get to the purple fur edge. All right, so that is what flat coloring looks like. So I'm going to label that just so everyone can see it clearly. Flat color, very straightforward, like the Wonder Woman example. The better your line work, the more interesting your flat color will look. But coloring doesn't stop there. It gets more advanced, right? So let's look at another example. This is an example of duotone coloring by one of my favorite illustrators, Darwin Cook. And before he worked as an illustrator, he worked as an animator. And so in animation, this is called cel shading. So what you see in flat color, the skin was just one color. Now the skin is two colors. So it's duotone, it's split into two. There's a light value and a dark value. Same with her, the red of her shirt, there's a light value and a dark value. Same with the blue on her skirt, light value and a dark value. So basically duotone flat color, or just duotone color, is when you split each local color into two. So let me do that with this. I'm going to make a duplicate of my flat colors. And then the first thing I might do is adjust them using levels. Make them a little bit brighter or a little bit darker. I think I'll make them a little bit lighter so I can add shadow colors. And now, on top of that, I'm going to duplicate and make a darker version. Lots of ways you can do this. I'll shift the midtones darker, just to give you a quick sense of what duotone color can do. And then using a lasso, I'm just going to cut out shapes that I think should be the highlights. And I'll keep it pretty loose. Just so you can kind of see what duotone coloring gives to an image. So all of these yellows I'm going to cut out, they're going to show the light yellow in the layer underneath when I hit delete. And then I can do the same thing with the flames. And within the shape, like cel shading, I can cut away the lighter highlights of the flames. So that the lighter pink shows through. And if that's not as dramatic as you like, you can always go back down to your flat color layer, and we can actually alter this a little bit more. Use the magic wand to select it. Then I'm going to use hue saturation, and I can push it more orange, push it brighter, so that it really shows up as different. Okay, then with the bird, where would the highlights on the bird be? Well, let's say on the beak, across the top of the head, top of the wings. You cut that out. Oops, I'm on the wrong layer. Layer management's important. On the back, maybe along the tail a little bit. Give it a little fuzzy shape, and along the top of this wing. This is one way I like to do flat color. It keeps it really, or duotone flat color. Cut edge, it keeps it very clean, very easy to control by having your lights and your darks on different layers. Okay, so that's what just the darks look like. This is lights with the darks. And if you do duotone, you really want to kind of do it everywhere. So in each jewel, I'm going to also give it a light value, even if it's subtle. It gives you the advantage of being able to show reflection quite well. And in the purple, do it as well. Maybe even in the inside of the crown. All right, so that's duotone color. But there's two types of duotone color. There's cel shading,